It was a strange thing, really, how Raymond always watered the plants that never bloomed. Every morning at exactly 6:45, he filled a ceramic jug, chipped along the handle, and poured water into the row of clay pots on his windowsill. Some were empty, others held nothing but dry soil. One had a sprout once. It withered on a Tuesday 4 years ago. He never replaced it. Raymond lived alone in a weathered house perched beside a lake that never seemed to freeze, even in winter. The house had green shutters, though most were missing slats. It had a mailbox with faded letters that still read "The Winters Family," though no mail had come in years that wasn't marked "Resident." A front porch light that still worked, though he rarely turned it on. He was a man of clocks and quiet. He liked his routines like people liked prayer, unquestioned, rhythmic, and just sacred enough not to be disturbed. The kettle whistled every morning. Toast always burned slightly on one side. The radio played classical jazz, the same CD he never removed, and each morning he passed a closed door at the end of the hallway. He never opened it. Inside, behind that door, was a room with a grand piano, ivory keys, walnut wood, quiet as a grave. He hadn't touched it in 5 years. Raymond didn't speak much, but when he did, it was with intention, like a man who had edited each sentence before saying it. The neighbors left him alone. Children once called him the ghost man before growing too old to care. Sometimes someone from the community center would leave a flyer at his porch. He never picked it up. He wasn't unkind, just finished. That morning, the clouds were low, hanging like tired curtains. He walked to the dock with his coffee. The steam rose, but he didn't sip. He stared at the lake, the way he did every day, as if it might give something back. An answer, maybe. It never did. He turned back toward the house when he saw the first oddity. A car. Not a sleek city rental, but a beat-up silver station wagon idling just off the gravel road. That wasn't right. No one visited. Not anymore. He stepped back onto the porch just as the car door opened. A woman climbed out, mid-30s, dark curls tied back loosely, a denim jacket 2 sizes too big. Behind her, the doors opened one by one, and what emerged made Raymond set his coffee down, slowly. 7 children. Not 3, not 5, 7. They ranged from toddler to nearly teen. Some held each other's hands. One carried a box wrapped in tape and twine. Another had a coat that clearly belonged to someone else. They stood in a line, silent, all looking at him. The woman raised a hand in a half wave. "Sorry, wrong house, I think." Her voice was calm, but her eyes weren't. They darted to the children, then back to him, like she was trying to convince herself of the mistake she had already claimed. Raymond didn't respond. She hesitated, then added, "We were looking for a woman named June Morgan. She was supposed to live here 5, maybe 6 years ago." "She moved out," Raymond said after a long pause. His voice was gravel. "No one's lived here since." "Oh." The woman looked down, then with a polite nod turned to herd the children back into the car. But the engine didn't start. The sky rumbled. A single drop of rain hit Raymond's boot, then another. The clouds let go all at once. Within seconds, the group was soaked. The kids stood frozen, as if they'd been rained on before and learned early that screaming never stopped it. Raymond opened his screen door, not wide, just an inch. And then he closed it again. He watched them drive off through the rain, a trail of mist following their wheels as the car vanished down the road. He stood still a long time after. The mug of coffee still on the porch railing, now filled with rain. Inside, the jazz CD had moved on to its next track. He walked inside, sat down, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't finish his toast. The rain had turned the dirt road to soft mud, the kind that sticks to tires and refuses to let go. Raymond stood behind his screen door, watching as the silver station wagon pulled back into view. Not swiftly, not confidently, but slowly, like it was trying not to be noticed. It coasted to a stop right where it had been hours earlier. Steam curled from the hood, the wipers screeched, dragging water from a windshield that was already fogging over. He could see them clearer now. The woman in the driver's seat had taken off her jacket and was rubbing the youngest child's hands. The others huddled in the back, quiet but restless. One boy picked at a loose thread on his sleeve. A girl leaned her forehead against the window, watching the rain like it owed her something. Raymond stayed behind the screen door. He could have turned off the porch light. It was flickering anyway. But he didn't. After a long minute, the woman stepped out again. This time she didn't wave. "I'm sorry," she said, voice damp with rain and something heavier. "I know you said this wasn't the right place. I promise we're not here to bother you." He didn't speak. "Our car won't go more than a few miles. No signal out here either." She motioned behind her. "It's just for the night. We'll sleep in the car if we have to." Raymond's eyes shifted to the children. One of them was coughing, now wet, persistent. The sound caught under his ribs like a hook. Still, he didn't open the door. The woman followed his gaze. "They're not mine," she said. "Not by blood anyway, just mine now." Raymond blinked. Something about the way she said it, simple, no explanation or drama, made him uncomfortable in a way he couldn't name. "I'm Lena," she added. "And that's Sam, Joni, Theo, Evie, Marco, Leah, and Jonah." Raymond wasn't sure what he expected, maybe for her to beg or insist or push past him. But she didn't. She just stood there, water dripping from her hair, arms folded tight across her chest. And those kids. They didn't cry. Not one of them. They just waited. Raymond glanced at the porch steps, then the dark sky, then the road behind them, now half submerged in standing water. "I don't have space," he muttered. "A floor is space. I don't have food for that many. We have bread, peanut butter, some apples." He looked at her. Really looked. Her lips were pale but steady. Her eyes tired but not pleading. She wasn't trying to sell him anything. She was just trying to survive one more night. Raymond opened the screen door all the way, slowly, reluctantly. "You can come in, just for tonight." Lena didn't smile, but she gave a single grateful nod. She turned back to the car. "All right, kids," she said, knocking on the windows. "Let's go slow. Don't touch anything unless you're asked." One by one they filed out, some carrying bags, some empty-handed. Their clothes were mismatched, patched, or too small. A girl no older than 7 held the youngest, a baby swaddled in a faded beach towel. Raymond stepped aside. They passed him like shadows, quiet, measured, used to being told they were temporary. Sam, the oldest, was the last. As he walked by, he looked up and met Raymond's eyes. "Thanks," he said. Just that. Raymond shut the door behind them. The porch light flickered one more time and then finally, softly went out. Raymond hadn't moved. He stood at the threshold, one hand still holding the doorframe, eyes fixed on the space the children had just walked through. The rain outside thickened, shifting from a drizzle to that heavy kind that falls straight down. No wind, no warning, just water, cold and certain. Inside, the air had changed. The room held the heat of other bodies now. Damp shoes lined up awkwardly by the mat. A few jackets draped over a chair. Sam had stacked the bags neatly in a corner without being asked. No one had made a mess. Raymond turned away from the door and walked toward the hallway. His footsteps echoed more than usual, as if the house were surprised by movement. He passed the closed door at the end, slowed, then kept walking. In the kitchen, he opened the drawer with the candles, pulled out one, then another. The power blinked once, a soft warning from the storm. He lit a candle and placed it on the table. next to the old clock that hadn't ticked since 2019. From the other room, he heard Lena's voice quiet, instructing someone to unroll a blanket, reminding them to be gentle with the baby. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't unkind. Then came a sound that made him freeze, a single note. Not a song, just a pitch. It came from the hallway, light, quick, like a child's finger had touched a key. He stepped out, heart tight. Sam stood just outside the piano room door, looking up at the doorknob. The sound had come from him, not the piano. He tapped the wall with his knuckle, finding the hollow behind the door. Raymond didn't speak. Sam didn't turn. After a long breath, Sam said, "That's a music room, right?" Raymond's jaw clenched. "It looks like one." He didn't answer. Sam backed away. "Sorry," the boy mumbled, then walked away toward the others. Raymond stood in that hallway until the candle on the table flickered with the draft. The next morning, the rain hadn't stopped. It hit the tin roof in long rhythms, as if keeping time for something no one remembered how to play. Lena was already packing when he walked into the living room. She was efficient, silent. The children helped without question. The baby was strapped to her back in a woven wrap, humming softly as if the storm had become its lullaby. "You're leaving?" Raymond asked. Lena didn't turn. "You said just one night." "I didn't. You didn't say we could stay." He looked at the kids. They weren't crying. They weren't asking to stay. They were just folding blankets and tying knots. "I didn't mean to throw you out. You didn't invite us in." He had no argument. She zipped the last bag, glanced around to be sure nothing was left behind, then nodded at the kids. "Shoes on." They lined up again, the same order as before. Marco, the one with the chipped front tooth, waved at Raymond. Joni smiled, brief but full. Sam gave a small nod. The rest didn't look back. They walked out as quietly as they had entered. Raymond stood at the window, watching as the wagon struggled to reverse down the slope. Mud grabbed at the tires. The windshield wipers dragged back and forth, clearing just enough space to see the outline of Lena's face. For a second, she looked toward the house. Just 1 second. Then she faced forward again. Raymond stared long after they disappeared into the rain. When he finally turned from the window, he noticed something on the floor. A small sock, striped, damp, too tiny for any of the older kids. He picked it up. It was still warm. It was almost dusk when Raymond heard the engine again. Same low idle, same wheels crunching along the gravel with an uneven rhythm, as though the car were limping home from somewhere it never meant to go. He didn't get up at first. He sat at the kitchen table, spoon in hand, eating a bowl of soup that had gone cold. Outside, the sky was a deep slate blue, the kind that came right before real darkness. Rain still fell, but quieter now, thicker, steadier. He heard the door knock once, then again. Raymond sighed, set the spoon down, walked to the front door and opened it halfway. There she stood, Lena, same soaked denim jacket, hair plastered to her temples, her eyes more tired than before, which didn't seem possible. Behind her, the car idled with its headlights still on, yellow beams cutting through the mist. "The road's gone," she said simply. Raymond blinked. "What?" "Flooded. Just past the trestle bridge." She motioned behind her toward the road that led out of town. "It's underwater. There's a tree down too. We can't get through, can't go back either." Raymond didn't respond. Lena pulled her jacket tighter. "We tried. Sam and I walked ahead with a flashlight. It's no good." She hesitated. "I wouldn't ask if there was another option." Silence hung in the doorway like a coat no one wanted to wear. Raymond looked past her. The kids were still in the car. A few of them had their face pressed to the glass. The baby had fallen asleep, visible only as a lump of blankets in Joni's arms. "I've got blankets," Lena added. "We'll stay in the car again, but I thought I should let you know we're still here." Raymond glanced at the horizon. The road out of town curved and vanished into the trees. If it was washed out, they really were trapped. He looked at her shaking slightly, soaked to the elbows, still trying to stand up straight. He exhaled through his nose, sharp, then turned around and walked back into the house. Lena stood there, unsure what that meant. Then she saw the porch light flick on. She opened the car door. "Come on, slowly. Shoes off before you go inside." They moved quickly but quietly, like soldiers who'd trained for this. Inside, Raymond was already pulling old quilts from the hallway closet. He laid one on the floor, then another. He fetched a pillow from the spare room, tossed it onto a couch he hadn't sat on in years. He didn't speak. Lena herded the kids in, their wet shoes left neatly on a towel by the door. They carried nothing but a single bag this time. No one asked for anything. The youngest, still asleep, was placed gently on a nest of folded towels near the radiator. Raymond returned to the kitchen, boiled water, filled an old metal kettle and placed it on the counter. He grabbed a tin of tea he hadn't opened since before. He stopped thinking. Lena entered quietly, holding two mismatched mugs. "Just hot water's fine," she said. He nodded. They stood side by side, neither speaking. The kettle began to hiss, the kind of sound that felt louder when no one knew what to say. After pouring the water, Raymond gestured toward the hallway. "There's a bathroom, left side. Towels under the sink." "Thank you. They stay one night." "I understand." He paused, fingers wrapped around his own mug. "I don't know how long that road will stay under." "I'll leave the second it clears." Raymond didn't answer. He just stared at the steam rising from his cup like it might spell something out for him. That night, the house held more breath than usual. The floor creaked differently. The air felt warmer somehow. As he passed the hallway, Raymond noticed Sam sitting cross-legged by the living room door, sketching something on the back of a paper bag. The boy didn't look up, just kept moving the pencil in long, steady lines. Raymond wanted to ask what it was, but he didn't. He walked to the back window where the lake was now nearly invisible through the rain. Behind him, a baby gave a soft cry. Then, just as quickly, a voice. Lena's began to hum. A low tune, minor key, foreign but familiar. And Raymond realized the house wasn't silent anymore. The living room had become a campsite. Quilts formed islands on the hardwood floor. A lamp in the corner cast a golden triangle against the wall, the only light left on after Lena insisted the children rest early. Raymond stood in the hallway, half in shadow, arms crossed, watching quietly. He wasn't sure what he expected, chaos maybe, tears, restlessness. But there was none of that. The children lay side by side, shoulders touching, breathing slow and deep. They'd clearly done this before, only Sam was awake. The boy sat upright, back against the couch, knees bent. He had a small, empty peanut butter jar between his feet and a pencil in his hand. Tap, 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 3 quick beats, then silence, then again, tap, 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 pause. Raymond leaned against the wall, listening. It wasn't noise, not random. It was timed, intentional. Each rhythm short but not aimless. Sam repeated the pattern a few times, eyes closed now, as if trying to find something buried in the dark. Raymond stepped forward slightly, just enough for the floorboard to creak beneath his heel. Sam looked up, startled. His hand froze mid-air. "Sorry," the boy whispered. "Didn't mean to be loud." "You weren't," Raymond said. His voice, though low, cut through the quiet like a string being tuned too tight. Sam sat still, unsure what to do with the pencil now that he'd been seen. "What was that?" Raymond asked after a moment. "Just a rhythm," Sam replied. "Something I remember." "From where?" Sam shrugged. "Not sure. I think it was a song, or part of one. Maybe not. Sometimes it just shows up." Raymond's eyes drifted to the jar. You play music? Sam hesitated. A little. We used to have a keyboard, the cheap kind. It broke. He didn't say how. He didn't say when. Raymond looked past him toward the darkened hallway. The piano room sat there, silent, its door still shut. He hadn't opened it, not yet. You got an ear for time, Raymond muttered. What? Most kids your age rush it. You don't. You leave space between the beats. Sam looked down at the pencil in his hand, as if it had taught him something. You ever teach music? He asked. Raymond didn't answer. Sam nodded like he already knew. He placed the pencil gently beside the jar and shifted to lie down, pulling the corner of a quilt over his chest. His voice was barely above a breath when he said, That song, I think it was called For Rainy Days, but I'm not sure. Raymond's body tensed. He didn't speak. He stood in that quiet a moment longer, watching Sam close his eyes. Then he turned back toward the kitchen where the kettle had long gone cold. Morning came slowly. The rain hadn't stopped, but softened to a mist that clung to the windows like breath on glass. The lake was gray now, blurred at the edges as if the horizon had forgotten where to end. Raymond stood at the stove, pan in hand, flipping eggs with the kind of precision that comes from years of repetition. 2 slices of bread warmed in the toaster. The kettle hissed faintly in the background. Behind him, soft footsteps padded across the floor. Morning? Lena said gently. Raymond gave a short nod. No more. She looked around the kitchen, old wood, creaky drawers, light bulbs that hummed. There were signs of care here, but not comfort. Everything clean, nothing welcoming. I can sweep up after breakfast, she offered. Maybe wipe the counters. The kids can help. No need. It's the least we can do. I said no. She paused, lips pressed together, then shifted gears. We'll be gone soon as the road clears. I called the ranger station from the payphone in town. They said maybe tomorrow, could be longer if the river keeps rising. Raymond didn't reply. The eggs sizzled loud in the quiet. Lena stepped closer to the window, watching the fog curl around the trees. This place, it's quiet in a good way. Hard to find places like that anymore. Raymond didn't answer. He slid the eggs onto a plate. No salt, no garnish, just food. She turned to face him. You don't have to talk. I just want to be useful. I can fix things, clean. I'm not afraid of hard work. Raymond placed the plate on the table without looking up. I don't need anything fixed. She sat, folding her hands in her lap. You live alone? He didn't respond. Sorry, she said quickly. That's not my business. A long pause filled the room like smoke, not choking, but thick enough to feel. Raymond finally pulled out a second plate. He didn't serve her, just left it on the table beside the first, like a signal without a flag. From the other room, the soft sound of children waking began, blankets rustling. Small voices asking if it was time to eat. The creak of an old board under bare feet. Lena stood. I'll bring them in one by one. Keep the noise down. Raymond nodded once. She walked out but paused at the doorway. Thank you for letting us stay, even if it's just until the road clears. Raymond kept his eyes on the eggs. When she left, he finally sat down. Fork in hand, he pushed one bite across the plate, then stopped. Outside the window, the rain began to pick up again, soft, steady, predictable. Like her offer, like his silence. It was Theo who found the box. He was the curious one, 8 years old, light-footed, with hands that couldn't help but touch what looked forgotten. The kind of child who didn't break things out of carelessness, but because he wanted to understand how they worked. Raymond had gone into town for supplies, just 15 minutes, maybe 20. The road was still half flooded, but passable with caution. He didn't say when he'd be back. Lena had taken 2 of the younger kids into the bathroom for a quick wash-up. Sam was helping with breakfast. That left Theo and Joni unattended in the hallway, drawn toward the creaky staircase that led to the attic. The door wasn't locked, just stiff. Theo had to lean his shoulder into it. The air inside was thick with dust and quiet, like the attic hadn't exhaled in years. Most of it was storage. Old suitcases, broken lampstands, a rack of coats that smelled like mothballs and pine. But in the far corner, under a yellowed quilt, sat a wooden box, small, square, with faded sunflowers painted on the lid. Theo lifted it gently, like he knew it mattered even before he saw what was inside. Joni knelt beside him. The box creaked open. Inside, a folded red ribbon, a photograph of a girl in a blue dress holding a music sheet, and a small stack of handwritten pages, musical notes scribbled in pencil, worn at the corners. A name was written on the back of the photo in soft cursive, Ellie Winters. Joni whispered, "Is that someone's daughter?" Theo nodded slowly. "Maybe it's the girl who made the music." They turned the pages. One sheet had the title For Rainy Days written at the top. "I've heard this," Theo said. "No, you haven't." "Yes, The words died in his mouth. Footsteps. Fast, sharp, climbing the stairs like thunder on wooden bones. Raymond. His face appeared in the attic doorframe before his voice did, but the voice followed hard and loud. "What are you doing?" The box fell from Theo's hands. The ribbon fluttered out onto the floor. Raymond's eyes snapped to the sheet music, then to the photo, then back to the children. "Who said you could come up here?" Theo stumbled back. Joni reached for his hand, eyes wide. "We didn't mean," she started. "Didn't mean what? To touch what isn't yours?" His voice wasn't a yell, but something worse. A breaking, cold and cutting. Lena appeared behind him, breathless. "What happened?" "They went through her things," Raymond said, voice flat. "Opened what shouldn't be touched. They didn't know. They shouldn't have been anywhere near it. They're kids, Ray." He turned sharply toward her. "You don't get to say my name like we're old friends. You don't get to treat this house like it's yours to roam." Lena stepped in front of the children. "Then tell us where we're allowed to exist. Tell me where grief gives you permission to be cruel." Silence. Theo bent down, picking up the sheet music with shaking fingers. Raymond watched him, chest rising fast. "Leave it," he said. Theo froze. Raymond stepped forward, took the paper, the ribbon, the photo, and placed them all back into the box. He shut the lid carefully, then carried it past everyone down the stairs, through the hall, and into the locked piano room. A click echoed as he turned the key. When he returned, he said nothing, just walked past them and into the kitchen. Lena knelt beside Theo. "You okay?" He nodded, but his eyes stayed on the door Raymond had closed. "I didn't mean to make him mad." "I know." Joni reached over and gently tied the red ribbon into Theo's hair just above his ear. No one stopped her. Downstairs, the kettle began to hiss. Raymond didn't come back, and the house, for the rest of that day, remembered how to stay silent. The next morning came heavy with quiet. No one spoke much. The children moved slowly, unsure whether Raymond would send them away or simply disappear into whatever room held all the anger from the day before, but he didn't do either. He stayed, at the table, watching. Lena sat in the armchair by the window, needle in hand, carefully stitching a torn sleeve. The shirt belonged to Raymond, a button-down, soft from wear, ripped at the elbow probably years ago. He hadn't asked her to fix it. She hadn't asked permission. She just sewed, slow and focused. The thread she used wasn't the same color, hers was navy. The shirt a faded green, but her hands were steady and somehow it looked right anyway. Like the kind of mistake no one would bother correcting. On the floor nearby, Sam tapped his spoon against the rim of his cereal bowl. A soft beat. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap. It wasn't the same rhythm as before, but it had a pattern. He wasn't drumming out of boredom. He was thinking. Raymond sat across the room, coffee in hand, pretending not to listen. But he was listening. His eyes flicked between Lena's stitching and Sam's rhythm, then settled on the bowl in front of him untouched. Joni whispered something to Theo. Theo gave a half-smile, nodded. Someone sneezed. No one laughed, but the silence softened. Lena tied off the thread, bit it loose with her teeth, and held up the sleeve to check her work. The stitch was crooked but held. She folded the shirt, placed it neatly on the edge of the armchair, and turned to Raymond. "You left it in the laundry pile." "I didn't ask you to touch my things," he said quietly. "I didn't ask to stay in your house." They looked at each other. Not a stare down, not defiance, just two people with too many things they weren't ready to say. Raymond looked down at his coffee. "Thank you," he said after a beat. Lena nodded once. "You're welcome." At the table, Sam stopped tapping. Then, almost like a question, he tapped a new rhythm, slower, softer. 2 beats, pause, 1. He did it twice, then looked up. "Was that it?" he asked. Raymond blinked. "What?" "The song, the one from the paper, so for rainy days. That rhythm. It felt like it was part of it." Raymond didn't answer, but he did stand up. He walked to the counter, opened the drawer, took out a pencil and a folded piece of notepaper. He placed both on the table in front of Sam. "If you're going to play with rhythm," he said, "write it down. Don't guess it from memory. It deserves better." Sam stared at the paper like it was gold. Then carefully he began to write. Afternoon stretched long across the lake. The rain had thinned into a soft drizzle, more mist than weather now, clinging to the windows in delicate beads. Raymond sat in his usual chair, sharpening an old kitchen knife on a whetstone with slow, practiced strokes. Each movement quiet, deliberate, like someone rehearsing patience more than sharpness. Lena stood by the sink, rinsing out mugs from breakfast. The children were in the back room, gathered around Sam, who was teaching them how to tap rhythm patterns using spoons and empty cans. Their laughter floated faintly through the hallway, muffled but warm. Lena dried her hands with a towel and glanced toward Raymond. He hadn't looked up once. She cleared her throat. "Sam said something yesterday," she said, "about a song called For Rainy Days." Raymond paused. The whetstone stopped mid-stroke. For a second, the only sound in the room was the soft clink of water dripping into the sink. "I think he saw it on a music sheet," she continued, watching him. "In the box upstairs, the one they shouldn't have opened." Raymond set the knife down on the table. Still didn't look at her. "It had a name written on it," Lena said softly. "Ellie Winters." Now he looked. Not fast, not startled. Just slow and steady, like a door swinging open after years of rust. Lena held his gaze. "Was she your daughter?" His face didn't change, but something in the room did. The temperature. The weight of the air. The knife sat between them on the table, gleaming faintly in the pale light. "I don't talk about her," Raymond said. "I'm not asking to pry, You are prying." Lena folded the towel carefully, laid it on the counter. "You don't have to tell me the whole story, but the kids are curious. They saw the photo. They saw what they shouldn't have, because they were where they weren't supposed to be." Lena exhaled, slow and steady. "They didn't break anything. They don't have to break something to ruin it." That landed heavier than he meant it to, or maybe exactly as heavy. She crossed her arms, leaning back against the counter. "You keep this house like a museum, like you're scared it'll vanish if someone breathes too loud, but people aren't ghosts, Raymond, not until you make them one." He flinched just barely. "I didn't ask for your opinion. You didn't ask for company either, but here we are." Raymond stood abruptly, took the knife, wiped it clean, placed it back in its sheath. His hands were steady, but his breath had changed, quicker, uneven. "You should keep them away from that attic," he said flatly, "and from me." Then he walked out. Lena didn't follow. Instead, she picked up the mugs again. One still held the faintest trace of honey at the bottom. She scrubbed it clean, slower than necessary. Behind her, the laughter in the back room rose for a moment, then quieted again. And the house returned to stillness. Not the peaceful kind, the other kind. The storm had passed, but the sky hadn't remembered how to be blue. Clouds lingered like smoke, thin and drifting, wrapped around the trees like secrets no one wanted to clear. Inside the house, the children had gone quiet for the night. Joni and Marco slept shoulder to shoulder beneath an old quilt. Theo had curled up on the couch, clutching a stuffed bear whose stuffing showed at the seams. Sam sat in the corner, still scribbling rhythms on a piece of folded paper, but his eyes blinked slower with each passing minute. Raymond stood in the hallway. He didn't mean to listen. He didn't mean to feel anything either. But her voice carried. From the small bedroom off the kitchen, the one that still smelled faintly of pine and lavender, Lena was singing, soft, low, not polished, not practiced, but real. Raymond knew that melody, knew it like breath, like memory. It didn't have a name when it started, just a hum his daughter used to make when she was coloring at the table, a sound she invented and repeated without even knowing she was doing it. Over time, it grew into something more, something she put notes to. Words came later, but they didn't last. Only the music remained. He had written it down for her once, on real staff paper. For rainy days, she had called it, laughing, because she said the sky always matched the notes. Raymond stood still, fingers curling into his palms. Lena's voice dipped lower now, into the final phrase, 4 descending notes, like soft steps leading somewhere safe. Then a hum, then silence. The baby had stopped fussing. The house was still again. Raymond leaned against the wall. He hadn't cried in 5 years, not when he sold the last piano from his shop, not when he boxed up the clothes, not when he closed the door to the music room and locked it with a key that felt like a wound. But now, in this strange moment he hadn't asked for, hadn't prepared for. He felt it, not a sob, nothing loud, just the sting behind the eyes, the quiet surrender of one tear slipping down a face that didn't know how to soften anymore. He wiped it away quickly, angrily, and then he walked to the back porch. The night air was cool, damp. He stood there, hands in his pockets, trying to breathe normally. Behind him, the house didn't chase. Lena didn't come looking. She didn't need to. The song had already reached him, and somewhere deep in the part of himself he had boarded up and buried, something had moved. Not much, but enough. The morning after the lullaby, Raymond woke before the kettle began its usual hiss. He didn't go to the kitchen, didn't start the coffee, didn't water the empty pots. Instead, he walked straight down the hall, past the coat rack, past the photo frame turned face down on the wall, and stopped in front of the door he hadn't opened in half a decade. The piano room. The key was already in his hand. He wasn't sure when he'd picked it up. Maybe last night. Maybe years ago and only now remembered. He paused. The wood was dry, the knob worn smooth by old habit. The faint smell of wax and dust curled out from beneath the door. He turned the key. It clicked. Raymond opened the door slowly, just a crack enough for morning light to spill in across the floorboards like a hesitant invitation. The piano sat untouched in the corner, upright, walnut wood, a white sheet still draped over the top like a veil at a funeral. He didn't step inside. He didn't need to. He reached across the doorway, lifted the fallboard just enough to reveal a few ivory keys, yellowed now, some chipped. His fingers hovered above them, then lowered. One note, middle C. It rang through the still air, clear, soft, aching. A note like an inhale held too long. He let it linger. Let it settle into the walls, the floor, the places grief had hollowed out. Then he closed the cover, pulled the sheet gently back into place, and shut the door. Behind him, the hallway was empty, but someone had been there. Sam. The boy stood by the corner holding a pencil, eyes wide, not with fear but recognition. Raymond said nothing. Sam didn't speak either. He just tapped the pencil once against his palm, the same rhythm from the night before, and Raymond, without knowing why, gave the smallest nod. The day moved slowly, like an old record played just a bit too soft. The rain had stopped, but clouds lingered, casting everything in a silver-gray hue that made time feel stretched thin. Raymond sat on the porch, oiling a rusted hinge from the barn door. The metal groaned in his hand, stubborn but not broken, like most things. Sam stepped out quietly, holding the same pencil he always had. It was worn down now, barely longer than his thumb. He didn't speak right away, just sat on the top step and watched. Raymond kept working. One drop of oil, small turn, wipe clean. Finally, Sam said, "Is it hard to learn?" Raymond didn't look up. "What?" "The piano." Raymond's hand paused. "Hard to learn well, not hard to touch." Sam nodded. "I think I like the sound of it more than the playing." Raymond glanced at him. "Most people do." Sam looked down at the pencil, rolling it between his fingers. "I thought you were a musician." "I'm not. But the room, I fixed them," Raymond said. "Not played them." Sam frowned. "What do you mean?" Raymond sat back, wiping his hands on an old rag. "I ran a repair shop, mostly uprights, some grands. Worked with churches, schools, homes, tuned them, replaced broken hammers, restrung warped keys." "You never played them?" "Played just enough to know if they worked, that's all." Sam was quiet a moment. "That seems sad." Raymond let out a short breath, not quite a laugh. "I didn't think so at the time." He looked out toward the lake, where the water had risen higher, brushing the edge of the dock now. "Ellie played," he added. "I just kept them working." Sam nodded slowly. "That song, For Rainy Days, it sounds like someone remembering." Raymond didn't answer right away. "It was hers." "Did she write it?" "Yes." "Why that name?" "She said rainy days were honest. You can't fake anything when the sky's crying." Sam smiled but didn't speak. Raymond watched him, then asked, "You want to learn?" Sam looked up, surprised. "You'd teach me?" "No." Sam blinked. Raymond stood up, gathering his tools. "But I'll fix the keyboard, the little one in the shed, the plastic one. Keys are stuck, but the wiring's still there." Sam grinned. "Really?" Raymond nodded. "You can teach yourself after that. That's how people do things when they want them enough." Sam stood too. "I do." Raymond handed him the rag. "Good. Then start by cleaning the dust off it. Every key, no shortcuts." Sam grabbed the rag and sprinted toward the shed. Raymond stayed on the porch, eyes softening. He didn't play, he repaired. But sometimes, he thought, maybe that was a kind of music too. The house was still again. Lena had taken the younger kids on a walk up the gravel road, now mostly dry. Theo had insisted on wearing his 2 small rain boots, and Joni carried a jar to collect pebbles with stories. Even the baby, wrapped to Lena's chest, had fallen into a soft, steady sleep. Raymond was out back, fixing the hinge on the garden gate. It had squeaked for months, but he'd never gotten around to it until now. Sam stayed behind. He didn't lie about it, he just said he wanted to finish drawing something. And Lena, already tired, trusted him. The house was quiet, too quiet. Sam walked to the end of the hallway. The door stood there, closed again, but not locked. Not anymore. He looked over his shoulder once, just to be sure, then turned the knob. The piano room smelled like old wood and soft dust. The light through the curtained glass windows cast a faded pattern on the floor, like shadows from a past that hadn't fully left. He stepped inside. There it was. The upright, modest, but beautiful. Not flashy like the ones in movies. Worn with a deep, steady color that reminded him of carved spoons or firewood stacked for winter. Sam walked toward it slowly, feet barely making sound on the hardwood. He lifted the fallboard, the keys weighted. Some were slightly yellowed, a few chipped. One had a faint blue mark on the side, as if someone had once tried to paint it, then stopped halfway. He sat down, gently. He didn't touch the keys yet. Instead, he closed his eyes, breathed. Then quietly, he tapped a rhythm on his thigh just once. Then he played. Only a few notes. Soft, even, no melody, just sound, measured, controlled. Then he paused, adjusted his hand, tried again, this time. The same phrase Raymond had played days earlier, middle C, then E, then A flat. The room answered him with warmth, not sharpness. The strings still held their voice, even after years. He didn't smile, but he exhaled relief wrapped in awe. A floorboard creaked behind him. Sam turned. Raymond stood in the doorway. Sam's hands flew off the keys. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I didn't mean—" "Keep going," Raymond said. Sam froze. "What? You played it clean, not heavy. That's rare. I just remembered how it sounded when you did it." Raymond stepped inside. He didn't sit, just leaned on the windowsill, arms crossed. "That mark on the D key," Sam said, pointing. "Was that hers?" Raymond nodded. "She liked nail polish, never waited for it to dry." Sam smiled. He looked at the keys again, then softer this time asked, "What was her favorite?" Raymond answered without thinking. "F sharp minor." Said it sounded like winter with hope still in it. Sam played the chord. It rang through the room like a question finally being asked. Raymond closed his eyes, and the silence that followed didn't feel empty anymore. That evening, just before dinner, the kids sat in a loose circle on the living room floor. Lena had given them each a stub of colored pencil and torn pieces of old packaging cardboard to draw on. No one asked for instructions. They just started sketching. Joni drew a hill with wildflowers. Theo attempted a superhero with enormous boots. Marco, always more abstract, filled his piece with spirals and stars and a sun with a smile. Raymond walked through the room with a basket of folded laundry. He didn't speak, but the sight of them, calm, focused, creating, made him slow his steps. He noticed Leah, the quietest of the bunch, sitting off to the side. She held her cardboard carefully, like it might break. Her lines were slower, more thoughtful. Every few seconds, she looked toward the hallway. Raymond paused behind her. She was drawing a house, his house. Windows, slanted roof, front steps with a crooked rail. But one thing stood out, a glowing yellow square drawn right where the music room was. He stared at it. Not a sun, not a mistake. A lit window. "Which room is that?" he asked, voice softer than usual. Leah looked up, startled by his question. "That one," she said, pointing down the hallway. "The one with the nice sounds. You saw light in there?" She nodded. "Last night, before bed, the door was open a little, just a little." Raymond's hand tightened on the edge of the laundry basket. "I saw the lamp," Leah added, "and someone was sitting at the piano. I think it was Sam." Raymond didn't answer. He kept looking at the yellow square she'd drawn. So bright it made the rest of the house look dim by comparison. He turned, slowly, and walked toward the hallway. The music room door was closed now, still, unlit, but the memory of that drawing stuck, light in a place that had stayed dark for so long. It shook him more than it should have, not because it was wrong, but because it felt true. The sun was beginning to dip behind the treetops, casting long shadows across the lake and through the windows of the house. The kind of golden light that made even worn-out things look gentle again. Lena had just finished cleaning up dinner. The kids were scattered, some napping, some coloring. Sam out near the dock skipping stones with Marco. Raymond stood alone in the hallway, holding something between his hands like it might break if gripped too tightly. It was the sheet, for rainy days. He had unfolded it slowly, smoothing out the creases. The pencil marks had faded at the edges, but the notes were still clear. Written by a young hand, his daughter's. He entered the music room and placed the sheet on the piano's stand. Then he stepped back. He didn't sit, didn't play, just looked at it for a long time. The door behind him creaked. Lena stood there, a towel still slung over her shoulder. She hadn't meant to follow him, but something about the stillness had drawn her. She saw the piano first, then the music, then him. Her voice was soft. "Is that—" Raymond didn't turn around. "It's hers." Lena stepped into the room like she was stepping into someone else's memory. She moved slowly, reverently. Her eyes went to the page. She squinted. A beat passed, then another. "I know this," she whispered. Raymond looked at her now. "I thought maybe Sam remembered it from the attic, but—" "No, I know this." He frowned. "How?" Lena stepped closer to the piano. "When I was little, maybe 6 or 7, I stayed in a foster home. Not long, just a few weeks, but the girl there, she played this." Raymond's eyes sharpened. "She said her dad wrote it down for her." Lena continued. "But it wasn't hers to keep. She played it every day before dinner, same 4 bars over and over. It was raining the whole time we were there. Cold rain never let up. But the song made it softer." She swallowed hard. "I never forgot it." Raymond's voice cracked just slightly. "Where was this?" "Carson, just outside Redfield. I don't even remember the name of the foster family, but I remember the piano. And that girl." "Ellie," he said. Lena looked up. "She must have been 8 then," Raymond continued. "That's the year she went into the system." Lena's face shifted. Shock, sadness, a slow kind of understanding. "She didn't stay long," he said. "None of them ever do." The silence between them filled with the weight of 2 different lives touched by the same fragile thread. Lena looked down at the music. She said the rain helped her think, that she liked playing something that didn't need words. Raymond nodded. "That sounds like her." Lena stepped back, gave him space. "She left a piece of herself in that house," Lena said. "And now, somehow, she left one here too." Raymond sat down slowly on the piano bench. His hands hovered over the keys. He didn't play yet. He just said, "I thought the music died with her." Lena didn't respond. She didn't need to. The notes were already waiting. The wind picked up that night. Not violent, just restless, moving through the trees like it was looking for something it lost. Inside the house, all was quiet. The children had fallen asleep in a heap of blankets. Lena had gone to bed early, her breathing soft behind the thin door of the guest room. Raymond couldn't sleep. He sat in the piano room, the door slightly ajar, a cup of cold tea untouched beside him. The sheet music was still on the stand. He had played it once earlier. Just once. The notes had come out steady, but his hands trembled after the final chord. He hadn't touched the keys since. The moonlight was faint, but enough to see by. He opened the drawer beneath the piano bench where he'd kept the small music box Ellie used to wind up every night, a porcelain lid with a chipped flower on top. The kind of object a child would treasure far beyond its value. He lifted the box gently. It clicked open. No sound came from it now. The mechanism long broken, but something slipped from inside, folded and yellowed. Paper. He frowned, surprised. It hadn't been there the last time he looked, or maybe it had, and he'd never dared dig that far. Raymond unfolded it carefully. The edges were soft, nearly tissue thin. The handwriting was unmistakable. slightly slanted, a child's attempt at cursive. It wasn't a song. It was a letter. Dear Daddy, I'm sorry for what I said that day. I didn't mean it. I was just mad and scared, and I didn't know how to say that. I know you tried your best. I saw you fixing the piano for that little girl down the road, and I wanted to say thank you, but I didn't know how. I didn't want to cry in front of you again. If I don't come back soon, I want you to know I didn't forget the rainy day song. I play it in my head every time it's gray outside, and I hope you still fix pianos, even if I'm not there to hear them. Love, Ellie. P.S. I put the ribbon in the box so it doesn't get lost. It still smells like Mom's old scarf. Raymond's hand hovered over the page, then lowered. He read it again and again. The ink had faded in places, but the words clung to him like breath, like forgiveness written too late, yet somehow still on time. He sat there for a long while. Outside, the wind calmed. Inside, Raymond let out a slow breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His fingers brushed the last line again. I didn't forget the rainy day song. Then, for the first time in years, Raymond let himself weep. Not in anger, not in guilt, just grief, simple, undiluted, and something else, something close to relief. Morning came with an unfamiliar quiet. No rain, no wind, just stillness thick in the air like the sky itself was holding a breath. Lena stood by the sink, drying a plate slowly, watching the steam rise from the dishwater. The kids were outside, running across the gravel path, chasing a dog that didn't belong to anyone. Their laughter echoed faintly carefree, untouched by what came next. Raymond sat at the table, cup in hand, eyes fixed on the grain of the wood. He hadn't spoken much since the night before. The letter sat folded in his pocket like a weight, pressed near his chest. Lena cleared her throat. There's something I need to tell you, she said. He didn't move. She set the plate down, dried her hands. About the kids. Still nothing. She pulled out the chair across from him and sat, elbows resting on the edge of the table. You asked once well. Not in words, but I saw it in your face. You wondered how a woman like me ended up with 7 children in a single van. Raymond blinked, barely. They're not all mine, she said. Only one of them is. She waited. Nothing changed in his face. My daughter's the baby, the others, they're leftovers, the kind no one picked. Raymond looked up now, just slightly. I used to work at a community shelter, Lena continued, in Redfield. Kids came and went, some for a week, some for a night, some never got claimed again. Her voice was steady, not rehearsed, but like a truth that had sat too long in the dark. One winter, 3 siblings came in. Theo, Joni, and Marco. Said their uncle was coming. He never did. Then Sam showed up after being shuffled through 5 homes in 6 months. Barely spoke, drew rhythms instead of words. Raymond said nothing. I didn't plan it, she said, but I couldn't let them be swallowed up by the system. So I took them, one by one, called in favors, lied on forms, told myself I'd figure it out later. And the others? Raymond finally asked. Leah and Jordan were dropped off during a storm. Their mother left them with a bag of crackers and didn't come back. His hand tightened around the mug, but he didn't speak again. I know what you're thinking, Lena said, that I'm reckless or dishonest. I'm thinking you did what no one else would, he said quietly. She looked at him, surprised. Raymond's eyes were tired but clear. He didn't smile, didn't move. He just sat there, holding the cup, letting her words settle. The sign on the door read Wilkes and Rowe, Family Law and Civil Records. The paint was chipped at the edges, and one corner of the glass panel had a hairline crack that had been there for years. Raymond hadn't walked into that building since the county tried to settle Ellie's guardianship. That day he'd walked out with less than what he came in with. He stood outside now, staring at the door longer than necessary. Then he pushed it open. The bell above jingled soft but sharp. Inside, the waiting room was empty save for a woman at the reception desk, tapping on an old keyboard. She looked up, blinked. "Mr. Winters." Raymond gave a single nod. "I called this morning." She stood. "Yes, Mr. Rowe is in. You can go on back." The office hadn't changed. Same brown carpet, same photo of a fishing boat on the far wall. Mr. Rowe, mid-60s now, thinner, glasses perched low rows from behind the desk. "Raymond," he said with a measured tone. "Didn't expect to see you." "I need information," Raymond said, sitting before he was asked. Rowe folded his hands. "About?" "Legal guardianship, minors, emergency placement." Rowe tilted his head. "You fostering?" "No," Raymond said, then, after a pause, "Maybe." Rowe studied him. "How many?" "7. That got a reaction. A slow blink, a slight lean forward. "They're with their mother?" Rowe asked. "Not all of them are hers, but they're with her." "And you?" Raymond stared at the edge of the desk. "They've been staying with me, temporarily, but the system doesn't care about intentions." "No, it doesn't." Rowe opened a drawer, pulled out a few forms. "You'd need background checks, home inspection, proof of income, letters of reference. And if you're serious, someone needs to file for temporary legal standing." "Can I do that?" Rowe hesitated. "You live alone. No prior fostering history. One prior investigation after your daughter's removal. That'll raise flags." Raymond's face didn't change, but something behind his eyes flickered. "I'm not saying you can't," Rowe added, "but they'll look at you hard." Raymond nodded once. "Let them." As he stood to leave, Rowe said quietly, "You're not obligated, Ray. This isn't penance." Raymond turned back. "No, it's a beginning." When he stepped outside, the street had changed. People noticed him now. Mrs. Klein across the road narrowed her eyes as she adjusted her mailbox. A teenager locking up his bike at the hardware store watched with a curious tilt of the head. Even the clerk from the bakery glanced over the top of her glasses as Raymond passed. He knew what they saw. The man who never spoke. The man who lost a daughter. The man now walking around town asking about children. He walked straight, shoulders tight, back toward his truck. But for the first time in years, he didn't care who was watching. It started with a spoon. Sam tapped it gently against a glass jar filled with dried beans, creating a sound somewhere between a knock and a whisper. Joni followed with 2 sticks, clicking together in an uneven rhythm. Theo blew across the mouth of a bottle, producing a hollow, shaky note that made the others giggle. By the time Raymond returned from town, the backyard had become a stage, no announcements, no audience. Just children scattered in a half circle, each holding something that made noise. A rusted pot for a drum, a set of keys dangling from a coat hanger for shimmer. Marco had strapped 2 tin cans to his belt and bounced in place like a one-man marching band. Lena stood off to the side, folding laundry on a picnic bench, pretending not to watch, but watching every second. Raymond paused on the porch steps. They hadn't seen him yet. Sam, standing in the middle, raised his hand. "Okay, we start on 3, he said, serious as a conductor. "Just like we practiced. 1, 2, 3. It was chaos, beautiful, stubborn chaos. Theo was off beat. Joni forgot when to stop. The baby clapped at the wrong time. Marco played loud enough to drown out everyone else, and still something about it worked. The rhythms clashed, collided, then, for a few seconds, synced. Not perfectly, but enough. Lena glanced up and saw Raymond standing there. She smiled faintly. "They've been working on this all week," she said. "Didn't want to tell you in case they chickened out." Raymond nodded slowly. "They'll wake the whole lake. That's the point." Joni ended the song with a dramatic stick toss. Marco dropped to one knee. Theo bowed like a magician. The others erupted in applause for themselves. Then they saw Raymond. Silence. No one moved. Raymond walked down the steps, hands in his pockets. He stopped in front of Sam. "You wrote that?" he asked. Sam hesitated, then nodded. "Kind of. It's just pieces." Raymond looked at the tin cans, the spoons, the bottle, the keys, then back at Sam. "It worked," he said. Sam beamed. No more was said, but the next morning, when Raymond came down to the kitchen, he found the plastic keyboard from the shed sitting on the table, cleaned, fixed with fresh batteries. And beside it, a folded sheet of paper, 4 handwritten notes. Title, Back Porch Song. It happened on a Tuesday. No one expected anything different that morning. The sky was pale, the lake calm, breakfast simple: toast, jam, a few boiled eggs that cracked too early in the pot. The children ate in shifts, as always. Sam scribbled rhythm patterns on the back of a cereal box. Leah tried to balance a spoon on her nose. Joni sang off-key. Raymond stood at the edge of the kitchen, coffee in hand, watching without watching. Then quietly he said, "Come with me." No one moved. He nodded toward the hallway. "All of you." Sam was the first to stand. Then Theo, eyes wide. Lena looked up from rinsing a mug, unsure what was happening. Raymond walked slowly, not waiting for explanation or permission. Down the hallway, past the old coat rack, past the photo still turned face down. He stopped at the door, the music room, the kids gathered behind him, barefoot, unsure. Raymond reached into his pocket, pulled out the key, the same one he hadn't touched in years, until now, when it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The lock clicked. He pushed the door open wide. The room was exactly as it had been. Light streamed through the tall windows, catching the dust in golden slants. The upright piano sat silent, its wood warm from the morning sun. The bench had a slight wobble to it, like always. The lamp beside it was already on. He stepped aside. "Go ahead," he said. 7 kids froze like they hadn't heard right. Raymond nodded. "It's open now. You can be in here." Joni was the first to step in. She moved slowly, like the floor might break beneath her. Then Marco ran past her with a whoop, making straight for the bench. "Easy," Raymond said, not unkindly. Sam followed, wide-eyed. He ran his hand along the keys without pressing them, like brushing past an old friend. Leah sat cross-legged by the corner window and just looked around, saying nothing, absorbing everything. Raymond watched them scatter around the room, filling it not with noise but presence. Lena stood at the doorway. You sure?" she asked. He nodded. "It doesn't belong to ghosts anymore." Sam pressed a chord, not loud, just enough to let it echo. Then another. Raymond stepped inside, walked to the shelf beneath the window and pulled out a dust-covered metronome. He wound it gently and set it ticking. Tick, tick, tick. "I can teach you a few things," he said to Sam. Sam looked up, barely hiding his grin. "Even the sad chords?" Raymond smiled just a little. "Especially those." He turned to the rest of them. "There's enough room for everyone. But one rule." They all turned toward him. He looked at them, steady. "No one plays alone. Not in this house." There was a beat of silence. Then Joni clapped. Theo cheered. Marco pounded one joyful, terrible chord. The sound filled the walls, not perfect, but full of life. And for the first time in years, the room didn't feel like it belonged to the past. It felt like it belonged to someone again. The smell of toast and scrambled eggs filled the kitchen like a warm fog. Butter hissed in the pan, and someone, probably Joni, had spilled jam on the counter. It didn't matter. This morning was different, for the first time since anyone could remember. Breakfast was set for 9. The table wasn't built for that. It groaned under mismatched plates, cups that didn't match, and chairs that had been dragged in from every corner of the house. One wobbled. One was too low. One had a cushion made from an old towel folded 4 times. 7 chairs for 7 kids, not one alike. Raymond stood in the doorway, mug in hand, just watching. They didn't notice him at first. Sam was buttering toast with the seriousness of a surgeon. Theo kept trying to sneak extra sugar into his cereal while Leah swatted at his hand. Marco was humming something under his breath, probably the new chord he learned last night. Joni spilled her orange juice and tried to cover it with a napkin before anyone noticed. They weren't quiet. They weren't neat. But they were whole. Raymond slowly walked in, placed his mug on the table and sat down. His usual chair, creaky and too close to the stove. The others shuffled a little to make room, instinctively pulling in their elbows, passing around the plate of eggs. No one commented on his presence. It was as if he had always been there. Lena placed a pan in the center, still sizzling. "No fighting over the crispy bits," she warned, pointing at Marco. He grinned, already reaching for them. Raymond took a bite, didn't say a word, but he looked, one plate then another. 7 different faces, 7 chairs, none of them meant to match. But somehow they did. He didn't think about how long they'd stay, or what the papers would say, or how the town might whisper. He just took another bite and listened. To spoons tapping, to stories half told, to music made not from notes but voices, and for the first time, the kitchen felt full. The piano room was quiet again. Not empty, never that, not anymore, but resting. Like a stage after the curtain falls, still holding echoes of joy in its corners. Raymond stood near the window, a hammer in one hand, a frame in the other. The wall above the piano had been bare for years, a space no one dared touch. Until now, he hung the first frame slowly. It held Ellie's music sheet for rainy days. Pressed between 2 panes of glass, the pencil lines still visible, faint smudges from where her hands once turned the page. The second frame went beside it. A child's drawing. Leah's. It showed the house from outside, a little crooked but full of character. Smoke puffed from the chimney. Trees leaned gently over the roof, and in the windows 8 glowing yellow squares. Raymond stared at it. "I counted wrong," Leah had said when she gave it to him. "There are 9 of us, but only 8 windows." Raymond had smiled then and said, "No, you counted right." Now, looking at it, he saw what she didn't. One of the light center window, second floor, was larger than the others, drawn in thick yellow crayon, almost like it pulsed. The piano room, the only room that had stayed dark for so long, now the brightest of them all. He stepped back, examining the 2 frames side by side. Music and light, grief and color, Ellie and now. Behind him, Lena stood in the doorway, holding a small cloth to dry her hands. "You hung it," she said. "I told her I would." Lena walked in slowly, eyes softening as they moved between the 2 images. "She'd like that," she said. "She's not the only one," Raymond replied. He didn't need to explain who she was, not anymore. They stood in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because nothing more was needed. Then Lena added quietly, "You know, in Leah's first drawing there were only 7 lights. I remember. She redrew it," Lena said. Said she forgot one. Said maybe she didn't see it before." Raymond looked at her, then back at the frame. The piano room's window glowed bold and golden. Sometimes he thought the light was always there. It just needed someone small enough to notice it. The fire had burned low, just embers now, casting a warm orange glow across the living room floor. The younger kids had nodded off in a pile of quilts, limbs tangled like roots of the same old tree. Theo still clutched a flashlight, now dim, flickering with its last bit of battery. Raymond sat in his armchair, barely awake, eyes heavy. Sam was next to him, on the floor, leaning back against the armrest. He hadn't said much since dinner. The music room door stood open across the hall. The framed song and Leah's drawing hung above the piano like they had always been there. Raymond reached to turn off the lamp, but Sam stirred. "Wait!" Raymond stopped. "What is it?" Sam sat up straighter, voice small in the quiet. "Can I ask something?" Raymond nodded. "Of course." Sam hesitated, looked down at his fingers, then said it without looking up. "If nobody else shows up for us, could you be our dad?" The words hung in the room like dust in still air. Raymond didn't react at first, not visibly. He leaned back slowly, hands folded. Then he asked, "All of you?" Sam nodded, almost like he regretted it. "I know it's a lot, and weird, and maybe not allowed." Raymond didn't answer. Sam added, "We'd still be good, I mean, we'd try." A beat, then another. Raymond looked toward the piano. He thought of Ellie, of her humming, of Lena's face when she heard the melody again. He thought of the 7 chairs at breakfast, not one of them matching. Of jam on the counter and a plastic keyboard on the porch. He thought of the drawing with 8 yellow windows and how, for the first time in years, no part of the house felt dark anymore. He looked back at Sam. "You already are," he said softly. Sam blinked. "What?" Raymond didn't say it again. He didn't need to. Sam leaned his head back against the armrest, exhaling like he'd been holding that breath for days. Then he closed his eyes. The next morning, just after sunrise, Raymond stood at the county office building, a folder in hand. The same clerk who'd helped him years ago looked up, startled to see him. "Mr. Winters?" she said. "You're early." "I have some forms," he said. 7 of them. She blinked, confused. "You're filing for—" "Yes." "All 7? Raymond placed the folder on the counter. "Yes." She opened it. Each document was filled out, neat, signed, dated. A note clipped to the top read, "Please fast track for emergency placement. The home is ready. The kids are already here." The clerk read it twice, then looked up at him. "Are you sure?" He didn't hesitate. "I wasn't yesterday," he said, "but I am now." Outside, the sky was clearing. The wind was soft, and for the first time Raymond felt like the house he returned to would not be the same one he left. Not because anything had changed, but because someone had stayed. The drawing of the house, now with 9 golden windows, a new one drawn in the top corner. Small but glowing brighter than the rest, the curtain